All right, y'all. Welcome to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. I'm Scott Horton. We got a good one lined up for you today, folks. Well, mostly Angela's got one lined up. I did a third of the lining up. In fact, it's our first guest, Professor Juan Cole from the University of Michigan. He teaches history there, and he keeps the blog that, of course, you all read all the time, right? Informed Comment at juancole.com. His latest book is called Engaging the Muslim World. Welcome back to the show, Juan. How are you, sir?
Hey, Scott. It's always great to be on.
Great. I really appreciate you joining us this morning, especially on the short notice there. But I was thinking, since it's September 10th and everything, we needed to talk about the twisted, perverted form of Islam that drove Muhammad Atta and his buddies to kill 3,000 Americans back on September 11th, 2001, in order that they may get a bunch of virgins in heaven as a prize.
Right. Well, it's not
and destroy our Bill of Rights, which they can't stand.
Right. Well, first of all, there are rules in Islam about warfare. And some of them come from the Quran. Some of them were codified by later great Islamic jurists, kind of like the Christian Church Fathers. And the rules are, medieval rules. They were reflecting a kind of society of knights in shining armor and chivalry and so forth. So in the Islamic law of war, you can't have a sneak attack. You've got to let the other side know you're coming. And part of the reason for that is that the war was about religion in the medieval times, and if you were attacking non-Muslims, you had to give them a chance to reconsider and maybe join your side. So you couldn't just attack people out of the blue. Second of all, you can't kill non-combatants. You can't kill women or children in the course of the war. And that's the Islamic war. That's what's called jihad. Those are the rules. So what bin Laden did, and then the other thing is the war has to be authorized by duly constituted authority. It can't be a vigilante thing. You can't just wake up in the morning and declare jihad on Europe if you're some undergraduate engineer. So what bin Laden did contravened all the Islamic laws of war. It's not Islam. I mean, it's just bears no relationship to Islam.
All right. Well, didn't he, though, say in the various fatwas from 1996, 98, et cetera, that, look, I'm giving you a chance, convert to Islam and do what I say or else?
Actually, no. I mean, bin Laden didn't speak in that way for the most part as a Muslim figure. He was quite political, and of course, from the beginning, when the United States and Saudi Arabia fingered him to raise money to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan, because he was a U.S. ally in the 80s and was put up to things by U.S. and Saudi intelligence for us, he's been a political figure. He said that the reason he wanted to hit the U.S. was he was upset about the U.S. and UN sanctions on Iraq in the 1990s after the Gulf War, which he claimed were killing a lot of innocent children. They didn't let chlorine into Iraq because chlorine can be used for chemical weapons, but it's also a key ingredient in water purification. So for some time, the water in Iraq was dirty, and especially babies, infants, toddlers. If you give them even slightly dirty water, it'll kill them dead. So there was a very high infant mortality, which was reported by the United Nations and World Health Organization, owing to those sanctions, and the ban on chlorine was lifted. Anyway, bin Laden said that was the kind of thing that was making him angry at the United States. He also instanced what he called the Israeli occupation of Jerusalem. He instanced the stationing of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, which he considered to be Holy Land, because Islam developed in Mecca and Medina. So the reasons he gave for going to war against the United States were political. It wasn't about infidel or not infidel. It was specific U.S. policies that was driving his response.
Well, now, so what about the guys that they recruited, Mohammed Atta and Ramzi bin al-Shib and those guys? For that matter, what about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? These guys are all political. What about the 72 virgins? I thought that was why they did the attack, Juan. Okay, I didn't think that. That's what they said on TV.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, these guys thought they were James Bond. They were living the high life. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was a undercover Al-Qaeda operative in the Philippines, in Manila. And from every evidence is that he spent his evenings at nightclubs. He had the pure silver cigarette lighter and
wore white-on-white suits with white ties and all that. He was a real pimp, that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, right?
Yeah, well, he was hanging out with the Filipino girls, and these guys were even Atta and the others. Maybe not so much Atta. They would go to strip clubs, go to bars, and a part of this was probably what's called an intelligence work, false flag tradecraft. That is to say, they were trying to throw any surveillance off. So they had permission from bin Laden to live the high life and to be libertines, to contravene Islamic law in order to avoid being fingered by, say, Egyptian intelligence or other intelligence agencies that might be trying to track them, because they wouldn't look like Muslim fundamentalists. And some of them weren't. Ziad Jarrah, who is Lebanese, was from a secular family. They didn't have much to do with Islam. In fact, he had a live-in Turkish girlfriend in Germany and so forth. And bin Laden himself at one point said that these young men are not like other Muslims and they have no fiqh, they have no Islamic law. So they were what scholars would call antinomians. They weren't following a law. So they don't sound like Muslims to me, and I think most Muslim jurists, if you laid out this pattern of behavior, would say, well, those guys weren't Muslim.
Well, I just actually read a joke the other day that said that the Christians don't recognize Muhammad or as a prophet. The Jews don't recognize Jesus as a savior, and the Baptists don't recognize each other at Hooters or the adult bookstore. And it's the same sort of thing, right? If a bunch of Southern Baptists were going on suicide missions, they'd stop at the titty bar first, wouldn't they?
Well, as I said, I think they were doing that to throw people off, but they also
the naked girls for looking at,
Yeah, I think it's also a complex thing. I think that bin Laden gave them permission to do those things because it would create a certain amount of guilt and make them more likely to think, well, their ordinary lives are over with anyway, and they may as well go through with this suicide bombing.
Huh?
But in my view, all of this came out of a kind of radical nationalism, which, was set off initially by the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. These guys were from a generation that saw what they thought of as atheist Europeans come in and destroy a Muslim country, commit massive ethnic cleansing. There were accusations of rape of Muslim women, attempt to incorporate it into the Soviet Empire. And the U.S. public was, at the time, outraged, and, of course, many U.S. figures gave a lot of help to the Mujahideen, or the holy warriors on the Muslim side that gathered to fight this threat. And I'm afraid that, the American position, the Reagan administration position, was that a vigilante holy war against a superpower is all to the good. We fostered this kind of thinking and this kind of organization. As long as we were deploying against the Soviets, we thought it was a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they say about how the blind cleric Omar Abdel-Rahman got into the country in the first place was, we know this guy. He's a friend of ours from Egyptian Islamic Jihad. He's fine. Let him in. All right, everybody, hold tight.